a small body hit the gravel hard. The boy didn't get up. His knees buckled, and his face dropped into the dirt. A crow screamed and lifted off the fence post. He tried to push himself up. His arms shook. His mouth opened. Two words came out, barely louder than a whisper. "I'm starving." A door opened up the slope. Boots on wood. Heavy boots. Slow steps. The kind of steps that don't hurry for any man. A man stepped onto the porch and stopped dead. He hadn't come down off that mountain in 11 years. His name was Eli Crowder. People in the valley below talked about him the way they talked about wolves. Quiet. Dangerous. Best left alone. What made him cross that porch that morning, nobody could explain. Not the men who knew him. Not the boy lying in his yard. Stay with me on this one. Eli walked off the porch. He didn't run. He never ran for anything. But his stride got longer with every step. By the time he reached the boy, he was already going down on one knee. He turned the small body over with the side of his hand. The face was covered in dirt and dried tears. The eyes opened a slit and shut again. "You with me, son?" The boy's lips moved, but no sound came out. Eli slid one arm under the small back and the other under the small legs. He picked the boy up like he weighed nothing. He probably didn't weigh much. Skin and bones under the rags he was wearing. The cabin was 20 paces back up the slope. Eli covered it without breaking step. Inside, he set the boy down on the bed by the wood stove. The cabin was one room. A bed. A table. A stove. A rifle on pegs above the door. That was the whole place. Eli built it himself 11 years ago and hadn't changed a board since. He grabbed a tin cup, filled it from the kettle that always sat warm on the stove. He held the boy's head up and tipped a small sip past his lips. The boy swallowed. "Ezzy." Another sip. The boy's eyes opened. They were brown. They looked too big for his face. Eli pulled bread and dried beef out of a cupboard. He tore the bread into small pieces. He set them on a plate beside the bed. He cut the beef into strips so thin you could see through them. "Slow," he said. "Don't gulp. You'll lose it all." The boy reached for the bread with a hand that shook. He got a piece into his mouth. Chewed. Swallowed. Reached for another. Eli sat in a chair across from the bed and watched him eat. He'd been alone on this mountain for 11 years. Not alone like a man with no neighbors. Alone like a man who had stopped expecting another human face to ever cross his door. He went down to the trading post twice a year for salt and powder, and that was the entire reach of his world. The rest was timber and snow and the sound of his own axe. People in the valley knew his name and not much else. They knew he'd come from somewhere up north. They knew he'd lost something. Nobody knew what. He'd buried 2 graves with his own hands 11 years ago. He didn't talk about them. He didn't talk much at all. But this boy was not going to die in his yard. The boy ate 4 pieces of bread and 3 strips of beef, and then his head dropped sideways into the pillow. He was asleep before his face touched the cloth. Eli pulled the blanket up to the small chin. He stood looking down at him for a long minute. "Where in the world did you come from?" he said quiet. He went outside. He stood on the porch and looked down the slope. The trees ran for half a mile before the land opened up into the valley. The boy had come from down there. He'd come a long way on those small legs. Somebody was missing him. Or somebody was looking for him. Eli wasn't sure which one was worse. He stepped back inside and closed the door. He took the rifle down off the pegs above the door. He checked the load. He set it across the table. Then he sat down to wait. The boy slept 5 hours straight without moving. The sun pushed across the floor of the cabin and laid itself out on the foot of the bed. When the boy finally stirred, the first thing he did was reach for his neck. His hand closed on something under his shirt. Eli watched him do it. The boy pulled out a thin silver chain. On the end of it was a small oval locket. He held it in his fist and looked over at Eli. "It's still here," Eli said. "I didn't take it." The boy's eyes filled up, but no tears fell. He put the locket back inside his shirt. "What's your name, son?" The boy hesitated. "Samuel." "How old are you, Samuel?" "8, sir." "Where are your folks?" The boy didn't answer. Eli waited. "Mama died last winter," Samuel finally said. "Daddy died before I was born." "And the place you come from?" The boy's whole body went rigid. The blanket bunched up in his fists. "Don't make me go back," he whispered. "Mister, please don't make me go back." Eli set the rifle down on the table. He leaned forward in the chair, so his elbows rested on his knees, and his face was level with Samuel's. "Nobody's making you go anywhere today," he said. "Just talk to me." Samuel started crying then. Not loud, just shoulders shaking and tears running down his face into the blanket. Eli didn't touch him. He didn't say they're there. He just sat and let the boy cry himself empty. When Samuel could talk, he talked. There was a place down the valley called Holcomb's farm. It wasn't really a farm. It was a house with a barn behind it and a field with a fence around it. When Samuel's mother died last winter, the county sheriff had brought him to that house. The man who ran it was named Mr. Holcomb. Mr. Holcomb took in children who didn't have anybody. He told the county he was a Christian man. Mr. Holcomb made the children work in the field from sunup till dark. He had a leather strap that hung in the kitchen. Samuel showed Eli the marks on his back where the strap had been used. Eli's jaw tightened. He didn't say anything. 2 days ago, Samuel had been sent out to chase the chickens back into the coop, and a hawk had taken one. Mr. Holcomb said it was Samuel's fault. He locked Samuel in the cellar without food and without water. The cellar was dark. There were rats. Samuel had pried up a board. He had crawled through a gap and run. He ran for 2 days. He didn't know where he was running to. He just ran up. He kept climbing because he figured nobody would chase him up. When he saw smoke from a chimney through the trees, he aimed for it. Then his legs gave out. Then he was here. He looked up at Eli with his face all blotched and red. "Don't make me go back, mister." Eli stood up. He went to the stove. He turned around and looked at the boy. "You're not going back," he said. Samuel started crying again. This time differently. Eli pulled the blanket up around the boy's shoulders. He sat back down. "Now listen to me, Samuel. People might come here looking for you. Probably will. And when they do, I want you to stay inside and stay quiet. I'll handle the rest. Do you hear me?" Samuel nodded. "Good boy." People did come. Faster than Eli expected. Mid-afternoon the next day, 3 men rode up the trail. Eli heard them before he saw them. Hooves on rock. A voice cursing about the climb. He stood up off his porch and walked out into the yard. He had the rifle in his right hand, pointed at the dirt. The 3 men came around the last bend and stopped when they saw him. The lead rider was a heavy man on a sorrel horse. He wore a wool coat too thick for the weather. Behind him were 2 younger men. One had a shotgun across his saddle. The other had a coil of rope. The heavy man squinted down at Eli. "You Crowder?" "I am. I'm Vernon Holcomb. I've come for a boy." 8 years old, brown hair, run off from my place 2 days back. I have reason to believe he's here. What reason? A man at the trading post said he saw smoke from your chimney yesterday. You only burn smoke when you cook. And you're known not to cook for visitors. Eli didn't blink. Boy isn't here. I'd like to see for myself. You won't be doing that. Holcomb's face got red. The man with the shotgun shifted his weight in the saddle. Mr. Crowder, that boy is my legal ward. The county placed him with me. You harbor him, you're breaking the law. Then bring the law. I am the law in that valley. You're not the law on this mountain. Nobody spoke for a long moment. The horses shifted their feet on the rock. The man with the rope finally spoke up. Mr. Holcomb, maybe we ought to come back with the sheriff. Holcomb didn't take his eyes off Eli. You've made yourself a problem, Crowder. A man like you, living up here alone. People are going to start asking what kind of man takes in a child. Eli didn't move. I'll be back tomorrow, Holcomb said. And I won't be alone. He pulled his horse around. The three of them rode back down the trail. Eli stood in the yard until he couldn't hear them anymore. Then he went inside. Samuel was under the bed. Eli could see one small foot sticking out. They're gone, son. Come on out. The boy crawled out. His face was streaked. Was that him? That was him. He'll come back. I know he will. Eli set the rifle back on its pegs. He went to the stove. He put a pot on. He started cutting potatoes. You like potatoes, Samuel? The boy nodded. Then eat some potatoes. That evening, Eli built up the fire bigger than he usually did. The cabin got warm. Samuel sat on the floor with a wool blanket around his shoulders and watched the flames. He had a tin plate of stew on his lap. He ate every bite. He scraped the plate with his spoon to get the last of the gravy. Eli sat in his chair across from him. He had his pipe out. He hadn't smoked it in weeks. You ever see snow up this high, son? No, sir. Comes in October. Comes hard. Buries the trail. Nobody comes up or down till April. The boy looked up at him. Sir? Yes, son. Are you going to be all right? Eli looked at the boy. He almost smiled. I'm going to be just fine. Samuel set the plate down. He came over to the chair. He climbed up onto Eli's lap without asking. He put his head on Eli's chest. He was asleep inside 2 minutes. Eli sat very still. He hadn't held a child in 11 years. He looked down at the small head against his chest, and his hand came up slow and rested on the small back. The fire popped once. The cabin was warm. Outside, the mountain was quiet. For a moment, Eli thought maybe the worst was already past. He was wrong. The trigger came at first light. Not a knock. A voice through the door. Mr. Crowder, this is Sheriff Boyd. Open up. Eli was already on his feet. He'd slept in the chair with Samuel on his lap and the rifle across his knees. He shifted the boy onto the bed without waking him. He picked up the rifle. He went to the window beside the door and pulled back the corner of the curtain. There were 6 men in the yard. The sheriff was on a gray horse out front. Behind him were 2 deputies, both armed. Behind them, Holcomb on his sorrel. And behind Holcomb, 2 men Eli didn't know. One of them had a writ in his hand. This wasn't pride anymore. This wasn't a feud between 2 stubborn men. This was the state. Eli set the rifle down beside the door. He didn't pick it back up. He opened the door and stepped out onto the porch. Sheriff, Mr. Crowder, I have a warrant here for the recovery of a minor child, placed in the legal guardianship of Mr. Vernon Holcomb, Samuel Reeves, 8 years of age. You are alleged to be harboring this child. Is that true? He's inside. I need you to step aside and let my deputies bring him out. He's not going. The sheriff didn't raise his voice. He didn't pull his pistol. He just sat his horse and looked at Eli. Mr. Crowder, I know who you are. I knew your name before you came to this country. I'm going to ask you, man to man. Do you really want to do this today? Eli's hands were at his sides. They didn't move. Sheriff, come up here and look at the boy's back. Just look. Then make your decision. That's not what the warrant says I'm here for. I'm asking you to look anyway. The sheriff was quiet a long moment. Then he swung down off his horse. Sheriff, this is wholly improper, Holcomb said quick. The warrant is plain. The boy is mine. Hold your tongue, Vernon. The sheriff walked up the porch steps. He took his hat off at the door. He went inside. Eli followed. Samuel was awake now. He was sitting up on the bed with his back against the wall and the blanket pulled up to his chin. Son, Eli said, this is Sheriff Boyd. He's going to look at your back. Nobody's going to hurt you. You hear me? Samuel's eyes were wide. He nodded. Show him. Samuel turned around and lifted the back of his shirt. The sheriff looked. He didn't say anything for a long time. Lord have mercy, he finally said. Quiet. He turned around and went back outside. Eli followed him. The sheriff walked down the porch steps and stopped in front of Holcomb's horse. Vernon. Get down. Sheriff, I demand. Get down off that horse, Vernon. Or I'll pull you off. Holcomb got down. You're going to ride back to town with my deputies. We're going to have a talk in my office. About a strap. And about a cellar. I'm a Christian man. I disciplined that child for. I said get on your horse and ride. The two deputies closed in on Holcomb. They didn't put cuffs on him. They didn't need to. They rode him out of the yard. The sheriff watched them go. Then he turned back to Eli. Mr. Crowder. The boy's still legally his ward until a county judge says otherwise. I can't change that today. But I'm going to recommend the placement be reviewed. Quick as I can. What do I need to do? You'd need to come to town. File for guardianship. Stand in front of the judge. With the boy. Eli was quiet. I haven't been off this mountain in 11 years, Sheriff. I know it. I don't have papers. I don't have records. I don't have anybody who'll speak for me. You have the boy's back. That'll speak. The sheriff put his hat back on. He swung up on his horse. Tomorrow, Mr. Crowder. Court opens at 9. If you mean to keep that child, you'd best be there. He rode out. Eli stood in the yard until the dust settled. If you're still with me on this story, hit that subscribe button down below. What happened next, when an 11-year hermit walked into a county courthouse with an 8-year-old orphan beside him, is something the people of that valley still talk about. Stay close. Then he went inside. Samuel was at the door. Are they gone? They're gone. For good. Eli put his hand on the boy's shoulder. Listen to me, son. Tomorrow you and I are going down off this mountain. Together. Going into town. And we're going to stand in front of a judge. Can you do that? The boy's face went white. Will Mr. Holcomb be there? He might be. But you'll be standing next to me. And nobody's putting their hands on you while I'm next to you. Do you believe that? The boy nodded slow. I want to hear you say it, Samuel. I believe you, sir. Good boy. Eli pulled a wooden chest out from under the bed. He hadn't opened it in years. He undid the latch. Inside were folded clothes, a pocket watch, a faded photograph of a woman holding a small boy on her hip. He set the photograph aside without looking at it long. He took out a clean shirt, a jacket, a pair of boots polished black. He laid them out on the bed. What's that for? Samuel asked. Going to town, son. A man going to court ought to look like a man going to court. Samuel looked at the clothes, then up at Eli. You haven't been off the mountain in 11 years. That's right. Why are you going now? Eli looked down at the boy. Because you can't go alone. The mountain trail was steep going down. Eli held Samuel by the hand the whole way. The boy was wearing one of Eli's old shirts, rolled up at the sleeves and tied at the waist with a strip of leather. His hair had been combed with water. He looked smaller than ever. Eli wore the black jacket, the polished boots. He'd shaved his face for the first time in a year. His jaw underneath was paler than the rest of his face. They came down out of the trees, and the valley opened up. Fields, a few barns, smoke from 100 chimneys. The town sat in the bend of a creek, a dozen wooden buildings around a square of dirt. Samuel slowed down. It's all right, son. Stay with me. They walked into town side by side. People stopped what they were doing and stared. A blacksmith looked up from his anvil. A woman setting out laundry stood up straight and didn't move. Two men outside the feed store fell silent mid-sentence. Eli Crowder had not been seen in this town in 11 years. He walked down the main street like he came down it every day. He didn't look right. He didn't look left. He held the boy's hand. The courthouse was a 2-story brick building at the end of the square. Eli walked up the steps. He pushed open the door. He stepped inside. The hall was packed. The whole town had heard. People were lined up against the walls and squeezed onto the benches. Holcomb was there in the front row, sitting between his 2 field hands. He'd cleaned himself up. His coat was brushed. His face was set. The judge looked up from his bench. He was an old man with white whiskers. His name was Judge Mercer. He'd been on that bench for 32 years. He looked at Eli a long moment. Mr. Crowder, Your Honor, I haven't seen you in this courtroom in over a decade. No, sir. Step forward. Eli walked Samuel up to the front. He stood at the rail. He kept the boy's hand in his. The sheriff was at the side. He gave Eli a small nod. Mr. Crowder, the judge said, the matter before us is the legal guardianship of one Samuel Reeves, age 8. He is currently the ward of Mr. Vernon Holcomb under a county placement made last December. Sheriff Boyd has filed a petition for that placement to be reviewed. You have come here today to file for guardianship yourself. Is that correct? That's correct, Your Honor. On what grounds? Eli was quiet for a beat. Your Honor, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the right words to say. I'm going to talk plain. Go ahead. That boy showed up at my door 3 days ago. He couldn't stand. He couldn't speak. The 2 words he got out were, I'm starving. I took him inside. I fed him. I watched him sleep. I watched him wake up scared of every sound. And I looked at his back. He turned to Samuel. Son, show the judge what you showed the sheriff. Samuel didn't move. It's all right. Last time. Then you don't have to ever again. Samuel turned around. He lifted the back of his shirt. A woman in the gallery let out a sound. Somebody else cursed under their breath. The judge stood up halfway out of his chair to see better. Then he sat back down slow. "Lower your shirt, son," the judge said. "Thank you for that. That was brave." Samuel turned back around. His eyes were full, but he didn't cry. The judge looked at Holcomb. "Mr. Holcomb, you have anything to say?" Holcomb stood up. "Your Honor, I run a Christian household. The boy is willful, disobedient, lazy. Discipline is." "Sit down, Vernon." "Your Honor, I have a right to." "I said sit down." Holcomb sat. The judge turned back to Eli. "Mr. Crowder, the county has on file that you are a man of unknown background. You don't attend church. You don't trade with the town. You live alone. You have no income, no kin, no references. By the standards this court usually applies, I cannot give a child to a man like that." Eli's hand tightened on Samuel's. However, the judge picked up a paper from his desk. "I have here a letter, sent to me yesterday by Sheriff Boyd, describing what he saw on this boy's back, also describing the manner in which Mr. Crowder presented the boy. Calmly, clothed, fed, standing on his own 2 feet, and describing Mr. Crowder's offer to come into this town today, which, as we all know, took some doing." He set the paper down. "Mr. Crowder, will you raise this child? Feed him, clothe him, educate him, put him in front of a doctor when he's sick, stand for him when he can't stand for himself, until he's old enough to stand on his own?" "I will, Your Honor." "On your word?" "On my word." The judge picked up his pen. "I am vacating the placement of Samuel Reeves, with Vernon Holcomb effective immediately. I am granting temporary guardianship to Eli Crowder, pending a 60-day review. Mr. Holcomb, I will see you back here next Thursday on the matter of the strap in the cellar. You will not leave this county before then." "Sheriff." "Yes, Your Honor." "See he doesn't." The gavel came down. Eli stood very still. He looked down at Samuel. "You hear that, son?" The boy looked up at him. "What does it mean, sir?" "It means you're coming home with me." They walked out of the courthouse together. The crowd parted. Nobody said anything, but a lot of people nodded. One woman pressed a small wrapped bundle into Eli's hand without a word, bread, still warm. A man at the back tipped his hat. Eli led Samuel back through the square, past the blacksmith, past the feed store, past the laundry line, where the same woman was now standing with her hand over her mouth. At the edge of town, the sheriff caught up to them. "Mr. Crowder, Sheriff, I'll bring word up the mountain in 60 days. About the review. You won't have to come down again. Appreciate it." The sheriff hesitated. "There's something else." Eli waited. "I knew your wife, Mr. Crowder, years back. Before, she used to come into the dry goods store with the little one on her hip. I just want you to know. She was a kind woman. And the boy was a good boy. A bright boy." Eli didn't say anything for a long moment. His jaw worked. "Thank you, Sheriff." "You're welcome." The sheriff turned and walked back to town. Eli and Samuel started up the mountain. The trail was harder going up than coming down. Samuel's small legs got tired. Eli hoisted him onto his shoulders without a word. The boy held on to Eli's collar. They climbed. Halfway up, Samuel said into the back of Eli's neck, "Sir." "Yes, son." "What did the sheriff mean?" About a wife and a little one. Eli walked another 20 paces before he answered. I had a family once, son. A long time back. A wife. A boy. He would have been about your age now. There was a fever came through one winter. I couldn't get the doctor up there in time. The road was buried. I lost them both inside of 3 days. The boy was quiet. I came down off that country and I came over here. I built that cabin. I figured I'd never have anything to lose again. Were you sad? Every single day, son. Samuel's small arms tightened around Eli's neck. I'm sorry, sir. Me too. They climbed the rest of the way without talking. When they came around the last bend and the cabin came into view, Samuel sat up tall on Eli's shoulders. There it is. There it is. Eli set him down on the porch. Samuel turned around and looked at the yard. The patch of gravel where he'd fallen 3 days back. That's where I came in. That's where you came in. I don't remember that part. That's all right. You don't need to. Eli pushed open the door. Samuel walked inside. He climbed onto the bed and sat with his legs swinging off the side. Sir? Yes. Is this my home now? Eli stopped halfway across the room. He set down the bread the woman had given him. He went over and sat on the bed beside the boy. Yes, son. This is your home. Samuel reached up and pulled the silver chain out from under his shirt. He held the locket in both hands. He opened it. Inside was a small painted face. A woman. Brown hair pulled back. Eyes a lot like Samuel's. That's Mama. She's pretty, son. I want to keep her here. With me. In this house. You keep her right where she is. Samuel closed the locket and pressed it to his chest. The days went on. In the first week, Eli taught him how to split kindling with a hand axe. The boy was small, but he had grit. He kept at it till his palms blistered, and he didn't say a word about it. In the second week, Eli started teaching him letters. They didn't have books. Eli wrote on a slate with a piece of chalk. A, B, C. The boy traced after him. In the third week, the boy carved his first piece of wood. A duck. It didn't look much like a duck. Eli set it on the mantel anyway. The first snow came in October like Eli had said it would. It came hard. It buried the trail. The world shrank down to the cabin and the woodshed and the path between them. In December, Sheriff Boyd sent word up by way of a trapper. Holcomb had been convicted on 3 counts of cruelty and was serving 2 years. The 60-day review had gone in Eli's favor. The guardianship was permanent. Eli read the letter twice. Then he folded it and put it in the wooden chest. That evening, Samuel was on the floor by the stove carving a second duck. This one looked more like a duck. He held it up. Pie. Looking. Eli stopped what he was doing. It was the first time the boy had said it. He didn't make a thing of it. He didn't want the boy to feel watched. That's a fine duck, son. It's better than the first. It is. Samuel set the duck on the floor beside him. He went back to whittling. Eli sat in his chair and looked at the fire. He thought about a small body on the gravel. 2 words barely louder than a whisper. A door he'd opened without thinking. He thought about how a man can spend 11 years building a wall around himself, and how all it takes to bring that wall down is a hungry child at his front door. He looked across the room at the boy. The boy was humming to himself. Quiet. Tuneless. Happy. The fire popped. The cabin was warm. Outside, the mountain was quiet.